Hello and welcome back to another Unity 5 tutorial. It's been a while since I started this character series, and in the first session we had a look at all the different options that I could find or options for putting characters into our game. And at the end of that session I said I was gonna work with the Adobe Fuse system, but after looking a bit more into it I found some things about it that I just didn't like, some limitations that I didn't like. Biggest one being the facial expressions. There is expression plugin for it, but I actually didn't get it to work. It's not compatible with Unity 5 as far as I know. And so I decided to jump straight at the UMAs. I think I've mentioned in that episode already that UMAs are kind of my preferred method. They just are a bit tricky to work with, or they have quite a steep learning curve to get started with them. At least that's my experience. So in this session, my goal is to be able to set up our scene for working with UMAs, and to do that in a way that we can recreate it in any other project. So what we're going to write is an editor script that will give us a button saying init UMA, and then we will have everything we need to work with UMAs, and maybe we also can create our first UMA. Let's see how far we get. If this session goes over time, then I might split it in half, but I'll let you know in advance. So the first thing I did was import the UMA 2 package into my project. So if you don't have that one, download it, import it. So this is all there is, all I did. And let's actually just save this scene. This is our UMA scene. No, it doesn't work. Okay, UMA scene. Okay, and now the first thing I want to do is actually jump into one of those example scenes, so we just get a better understanding on how UMAs work. We already had a look in the last episode how it works, but yeah, let's just have a look here. So as you hit play, all those pretty UMAs appear. Those are all UMA characters. And as you look in this in the hierarchy view, open up this UMA object, you see there they are. So we have a female one, we have a troll, we have male, and then Hugo and Lucy. And then we have a whole lot of other objects. And these are the objects that are basically, they are necessary. They have to be in your hierarchy in order for those UMA characters to appear. How it all works together, we'll look at it in a while. But I just want to show one thing here. If you look at one of those characters, I just turned it off for now. You see they all have this script called UMA Dynamic Avatar. And in this script there are some public variables, one being the UMA recipe. And here you can see Lucy got her recipe set to Lucy, male got it set to male. But if I now hit the button and just change the male to Lucy and hit play again, you'll see there are two identical Lucys standing next to each other. And this is important to understand, that all what defines them, the way they look like, it's all set in this recipe. In order for the recipe to work, you need all those other components, but basically what we'll focus on in this session is to create this part. We will not focus that much on the UMAs themselves. Okay, let's get to work. Open up the UMA scene. We don't need to save anything. And well, we don't really need a scene for that. I just find it less distracting if everything here is empty. Okay, first thing here we do is create a folder, and I'm gonna name the folder, let's name it UMA Tools. Feel free to name it any way you'd like. And in this folder, we're gonna create an editor folder. That's not necessary that we put our script in the editor folder, since we're not creating anything for inspector in this script, but I just think it makes more sense because we're gonna create a menu item, so it just makes more sense to have it in the editor folder for me. So we're gonna create a C# script, and I'm gonna call it UMA initializer, something like that. You figure out a better name for it. So if you followed along my tools series so far, you know how that all works, so there's nothing new to it. We just import Unity editor. We get rid of our mono behavior. We don't need to derive from that. We can also get rid of all those classes. And what we need to do is create a menu item. And I'm just gonna create one called UMA tools. Maybe not all capital. And a menu button called init UMA. So this is our menu item, and it has a static void function initialize UMA. Okay. So if you haven't done that before, that's all there is to create a new item up here. We have a function, nothing happens as I press it, but it's there already. If you like to place it into your UMA folder, your UMA tab, nothing simpler than that. Then you just delete the tools, just leave UMA, and you can place it right in here. I just think it's helps to keep my own code separate from the UMA package, but do as you like with that one. And now we need to create quite a few game objects. So the first one will be the UMA object. That will hold all our game objects that are related to initializing the UMA system. Then we need a race library. We need slots. We need overlays. And we need a generator. And not to forget at the end, a context that holds it all together. Okay. There will be a lot of duplicate code. There's maybe different ways to do that, but I just want to keep it readable again, and that's why I do it the way I do it. So first we create an empty object. We're gonna name it UMA, and well, I just stop here for a second, jump to the races, and this one I'm gonna call races, and the object's name is race library. And actually just need to replace that, and we're gonna parent it under the UMA object. So you can do races.transform.set parent UMA.transform, and if we just want to try that out, all that does is now it creates an UMA object. It's an empty game object, nothing to it. And this one has a child object, which is our race library. Again, an empty object, nothing to it. So I just delete it again. And now what we can do is actually just take this code and use it for the slots, use it for the overlays, and use it for the context. Generator will be a bit different. So now, of course, we need to get rid of all those errors. So we have slots. We have overlays. And we got context. So much for the game objects, and now we still need to change the names. So this will be a slot library. This will be our overlay library. And this will be our context. So they all get parented under the UMA object, so that works well. And now with the UMA object itself, if you, for example, you had an object called, a game object called game controller. Maybe you have several scenes in your game, and this is one you always keep, you never destroy it. That would make sense to parent the UMA object under that one. So we just have a look if there's a parent selected. We do that in this way. If parent equals a selection active game object. So if there is a parent, then UMA transform set parent to our parent.transform. Save the script, go back to Unity. Now I have the game controller selected, hit init UMA, and you see the UMA object gets parented to the game controller, and here we have our 4 game objects we've created as children. So and now we need to think how we want to do this. So basically we need to work with what the UMA package brings us. And for example, let me see if I even find it. The thing about it is that it's actually, some things are well hidden, and it's those 5-6 game objects I've showed you before in the example scene that are essential for the UMA system to work. They are not all in one place. They are not all in one prefab, but you kind of need to pull it together yourself, or you just create a prefab from one of those example scenes. What I want to do is search through our assets and find the right one. Right now here we have the races. So this is UMA race data. And we need those races. We need to set them on our race library. And yeah, so I want to also do it in a way not to go to a specific path. If the UMA package changes, that would not really be helpful, because then we would need to rewrite our code. So we try to do it in a generic way. So back in MonoDevelop, the first thing we need to do is get a race library. I'm gonna call this race library, and this one is set by races at component race library and parentheses. So this one it adds our component to races, to our game object, and automatically gives us a reference. So we can work with it. And now we need an array of strings. I call this races data. And this is how we'll get all those assets, the UMA races data. We're going to use the asset database, find assets, and this one takes a filter. So our filter will look like this: t : UMA dot race data and null. So the null is easily explained. Null would be the path we want to search. If we put in null, we just search our whole assets folder. And t means here type. So we're looking for any asset by the type of UMA.raceData. And this will give us a string of guide objects, or I don't know, guide strings, I guess you would call them. I don't fully know what they are, but the way I understand it, it's a reference to the location of our assets. So we just need to iterate through all of them. So right here we got an array of strings, and then for each loop we just go through all of them, and for each of those strings we're gonna now create from those guide objects, we're gonna get a path, and we're gonna do this like so. Race path is asset equals asset database, and there's this function guide to asset path, and here we just put in our string from our array, and this gives us a path. So if you get this as a debug log, you can see the whole path, like assets and UMA and wherever it leads to. But that mustn't even bother us, because we just want to get the assets from it. So now we can instantiate the assets we find. And we are going to use the asset database once more for that. There is a function load asset as path. UMA.raceData. Race path. So there might be other faster options to do that. I just saw a function I didn't see before, load all assets at path. So that might actually just work if you use if you get all assets. No, I don't know. No, I would only use the specific path. No, it wouldn't work for us. So I think this is the way to do it. If you know a better way, please put in a comment below. And yeah, what is left to do is to take our race library, and we can add a race, which is our race asset. And so you can see what's actually happening. We just had to save the script, head back to Unity, hit init UMA once more, and navigate to our race library. And this is the script, the race library script, and all it takes as public variables is this element, race element list, and we populated that list in looking through all the races that are in our assets folder, and all those, or the race data, we just put it in this array. So right now we only have two, human female, human male. This is how UMA works. Like the female body and the male body has a fairly different topology, and that's why they are really different. Like you could have whatever dwarf a female dwarf and a male dwarf, they could still use the human male and the human female race, because the topology would be similar, just stretched or squeezed in that example of dwarfs. But you would not need a different race. If you now have something completely off, like if you want to have animals or whatever, then you would need, again, a different race. But for now, we can do actually quite a lot with just human female and human male. So now we still have a few more to populate, but the slots and the overlays are fairly similar, if not identical, to our approach with the races. So we can actually copy this entire section and paste it underneath slots. Now our slots object still needs, or actually, let's start different. We need a slot library. Slot library, and we're gonna do it in the same fashion. Slots add component slot library parentheses, and now we just need to change all the names again, so that's taking its good time. Slots data would be here. We can keep the data objects, and of course you could keep the names. They are protected here in this for each loop, but I like to keep things readable, and it would be irritating later on. You look for the slots and then there's everywhere race data, and it just doesn't make sense. Could also take more generic names, but yeah, I've started it that way, so I'm gonna keep doing for now. So this should be everything, except that right now we're not looking for race data, but we're actually looking for an UMA slot data asset type. So we need to change that here as well. Here and here. And we don't have a race library, we have a slot library, and we can add a slot asset like so. Again, save the script, head back to Unity, just need to delete this one and press init UMA. And this time if we look at our slot library, so what we've done is we've added the slot library and we've populated it. If you want to do that by hand, what you can do is just drag your slot asset and drag it in this drag and drop field, and it will add it on the bottom of this list. But what we've done now is we've researched the whole path and add them all in our loop in here. So those slots, if you look at the UMA's bodies, what the slots would be, it's similar to the mesh, or it would be representing the mesh. So the way it works is that the whole body is cut into several pieces. There are some that are necessary. If you don't add them to UMA, there will be no UMA. Others, like female shirt, you don't have to have that in order to get your UMA displayed, but you would need a head, excuse me, you would need a torso, and you would need some legs and stuff like that. So this is all in here, but the slots themselves, they don't have any, they don't hold any texture data on how it looks like. They're basically just the mesh, and the overlays, they are on top of the slots. So that's just how the name convention goes in UMA, in the UMA system. So overlays would be a synonym for the textures that are put on top of those slots. The nice thing about it is that you actually don't have to be stuck with your slots. Like you can have an overlay going covering multiple slots. You can have overlays covering overlays. The same way you could have slots intersecting with each other. So there are cool things you can do there actually. Another thing, just to show it, if you click one of those, it will open up the path where you find it. And as you can see here, it's all a bit hidden. So if you want to do that by hand, I'll be in for a long time looking and dragging and dropping. Okay, let's head back. Actually, the tutorial's already gone quite long. So I think I'm gonna make a cut here. And we're gonna finish off the rest in the next session. So thanks for watching and see you then. Bye.